one of the things that we're going to hear now from Arama Mataira is we're going to get a nice look into the Indigenous world, both First Nations in Australia and Māori here. The great thing about Arama is that she has started her life as a school principal. I owe my education to a great school principal. So please, Arama, welcome. Thank you very much.
Was asking for something. Can I talk? Oh yeah, I can talk.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Kia ora tātou, ko tainui me takitumu o ku waka, ko ngā te kahunguni me Ngāti Maru o ku iwi, he mihi mahana kia koutou katoa, he mihi aroha ki ngā mana whenua o tēnei wāhi. Nō reira, tēnā koutou katoa, ko Arama Mataira tōku ingoa. I'm here to share 2 stories of the wild, wild west. Any cowboys in this room? Yay! Just kidding. Who's been to West Auckland, or who knows of West Auckland? Yes, a couple. What about Western Australia? And a couple there too. All right, these stories are, one is from West Auckland, one is from Australia. How can I see the screen, Mr. Tech Guy? Where's he gone? I can't see the screen. I can only see that. So, that's been sorted. As Rowan said before, I was a school principal, a teacher for 20 years. I worked in remote Australia in 2 different communities. And that, I'm just making up stuff now. Oh, here we go. And that led me to the work that I do now, which is called Walk Together. And you'll learn what it is that I do through this presentation. So, how can I?
You can tell me where to move the slide.
Okay.
When the tech guy comes back in, we'll get unconfused, but let's not stop you from talking.
So yeah, the question there, first of all, it's about courage to walk in 2 worlds, and that's a little bit about what I'm going to talk about today. And the question here is, what does this picture have to do with wicked problem solving, systemic change, and cups of tea? I'm going to tell you a story. So when I first was in my second principal role in a place called Wiluna Remote Community, which is about 1,000 kilometres inland from Perth. To get your shopping, you drive 700 kilometres, you drive back. Any meetings are hours and hours away. And in this community, I was in about the first week of being principal, and I was listening to the staff talking, listening to the discourse that was happening. And I heard the staff clapping, and I was like, oh, fun, what's this clapping? And so I went in to have a look at the clapping, and I said, what's going on? And all of the teachers were clapping because no kids jumped off the bus to come to school. And I was like, well, that's strange, you know, that would actually make me sad if I was a teacher, because I love teaching and I love kids. But that was quite the opposite. So they were clapping because no kids had come to school. And I was like, that's different. Wasn't used to that kind of thing. And so I said, you know, where are all the kids? And they said, oh, they're off emu egg hunting. I was like, awesome, emu egg hunting. I'm going to go, how do we do this? And they said, no, we don't mix worlds. We do school, and the community does whatever they do. And I was like, okay, that's super interesting. I delve into it more. I'm really into Indigenous knowledge systems. That's not a surprise. But this is a picture of the emu constellation. Do you know this? Some of you know it. So I've got 2 nods there. And basically you can see a little head, neck, the body and legs. And this constellation appears in the sky only at certain times of the year. That indicates to the local Indigenous community that the eggs, the eggs are ready to hunt and to collect and gather. And so that got me thinking as a school principal about why is it that those worlds are separate? Why do our children, or not my children, I'll call them all my children, why do our children have to leave their culture at the school gate and come in and learn different knowledge systems? being Māori, living in two worlds with a Pākehā mother and a Māori father, I understood difference and different worldviews, and understood them and came to really appreciate how both of those worlds are relevant. But these kids were coming into school, you know how much time we have with kids, and not doing any of their own learning in their own language about their own culture and stuff. So that's what that means. I'm going to tell you about this in a sec. Yes, please. Oh, backwards around here. One job. So, thank you.
Okay, good thing I said I love my principles. Thank you.
Wicked problem solving, you know this. It's some, our systems aren't working for everybody, and that's where I step in. But what we did was to challenge status quo in all sorts of many ways. I just gave you a cultural dilemma as one, but school attendance is a problem in all of the Western world. So we've got to ask ourselves, like, what's really going on? And in this school, are you able to press this?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Button?
Doink.
And in this school, when we looked at the records and we went back into old school records that were in the safe, principals used to have ledgers. And I looked at this data, and for more than 60 years, the school attendance had not shifted between 50 and 60% for decades. And to me, that signaled an issue that nobody was talking about. So what we did was we have the education department's attendance data, which is fraught with issues. I'm not going to go into them today. You might know about some of these issues. So we decided to tell the attendance story. And this is back in 2013, where you actually had to pay a shit ton of money to get coders to code every single little thing. And that's what we did. We took a year's worth of data of our kids. We also had a really tricky transient issue. So 156% transients. What that means in real life is that a teacher will start with a certain amount of kids in the class. By the end of the year, they're almost all different, or half of them, or 3/4 of them. So in terms of sustained learning, all of that sort of stuff, very complex. Also had a teacher transient issue. The teachers staying in these remote educations stay short periods of time, between 6 to a couple of years. Some stay longer, like me, 20 years. But it's a high turnover. So we created another story about attendance, and we created this animation to tell that story. So the data we looked at, we were trying to solve the wicked problem through the data. And when we did that, we set the two data sets side by side, and we could look at the differences and the discrepancies. And rather than saying the deficit, I'm going to come over here to be deficit, Aboriginal kids don't care about learning, their parents don't, look at my son, put this down, their parents don't care, they're not interested in education, they're all, out drinking, whatever. And this non-deficit was telling stories about where people were going. In a nutshell, we realised that the wicked problem was attendance was tied to 60,000 years of cultural tradition. And once we could unpack that, we could then deal with the dilemma of why the school attendance was at 50 to 60% for 60 odd years. And we did that systematically. And that's just one example of using challenging the status quo. That's right, courage to challenge the status quo. That's what I wrote. And do that with evidence and with story, and just unpack that data and tell the story in a different way. So we did that to everybody, all the way up to the Minister of Education, which allowed us to leverage different points where we could be innovative in the education system, where there might have been mandates, say, for other schools, because we had this evidence in this database, and we've done so much co-creating with the community to get the story out.
I'll try this one. I did it.
That was Western Australia, and love that mahi, and there's a million more stories I could tell, but that was just one of them. And I'm going to take you to West Auckland, where I'm part of a collective called Te Kahui Puhoro. formerly known as the Māori Thought Leadership. We're a large collective of about 60 organisations, maybe about 90 plus and growing Māori people who do all sorts of Māori things for Māori in West Auckland. So we're very Māori-centric for West Auckland. And our goal is to do all sorts of things, basically to make things thriving for Māori in West Auckland. And so this is,
I find the arrow on the right there. It's right there, right?
Zoom. So we decided that we were interested in how are Māori going after 3 significant events: COVID-19, Auckland anniversary floods, and Cyclone Gabrielle. And we wanted to, because what we noticed when we were looking at all the literature or hearing all the strategies that were out there was that Māori's either not talked about or they're hidden somewhere in that literature, or we just get missed. And from a te tiriti and tangata whenua perspective, for me anyway, that's problematic. And so we decided that we would go and ask our community. It took a good part of 2 years to do this work. 3 cups of tea and wānanga, or yarning is the other term I use, and methodologies that are aligned to Māori rangahau, where we could connect relationships and see between and get those stories, record them, and then do something with them. So this is another example of getting an evidence base together, and you can...
I think I've gone too far.
No, that's okay.
Is that fine?
That's okay.
Do you want me to go again to the right?
No. What was I saying? No one's listening. So we collected all of these stories, and then we were able to use Kumu. Has anyone used Kumu? I know some peeps have, because I got the idea to use Kumu from someone who did work down here. We decided, so the research methodology using cups of tea and Māori methodologies were used to uncover lots of things that literature didn't pick up. More things where our people slip through the system. It shows lots of strengths as well that have happened in occurrence of since those events, but also more hardship, more areas where our people have gone that way, and so that's of our interest to see where we can work smarter, not harder. And you can look at this map. I've got a QR code that you can actually go and read. There's a website that shows you the methodology and our aims, and it's got a report. So this was us having attempts at forming the future instead of always problem solving. We've got to do both, but we don't do as much of the future forming as we do problem solving. I think next slide. I can't remember what is.
That's really good, by the way. I'm loving what I'm doing. Even though I'm barely driving.
I can't remember the next slide.
Yeah, that's evidence gives you permission to be brave.
Oh yeah, what is that? Courage to be different. And so I think I appreciated the last speaker for talking about all the barriers that occurred over time, and we experienced so many barriers. I wasn't going to talk about it because the message today really is about that storytelling with evidence, and then along with that evidence you have strategies and that North Star goal I was talking about before. We want to get to that North Star goal, but we can't do that if we're just a group of Māori that are saying things aren't great for us. No one listens. But if we can come with good, robust research, evidence, and the stories to tell, then people start listening. I think that's one of the messages here. The methodologies are also all co-created with community. So none of the stuff is done in isolation. It's all through partnership, all through working, I call it authority to commit, so that we get the communities, even can we use Kumu was one of the questions. Can we take this data and put it into Kumu? Kumu lives in another country, is that okay? And so constantly designing that process along the way then gives us a critical mass. there's more ownership when you do it like that. Anybody can now take the story and go and use that story to tell their stories, because we're a large group, 60 organisations, 90 plus people working. Some of us are independent like me, but most of us are in service provision and government, or some kind of service providing. That's complex Māori outcomes. If anyone has to deal with Māori outcomes, te tiriti implementation, so on and so forth. These are efforts all around doing that. So yeah, and the other was shedding light, is just making ourselves visible. What did I say? Oh, this is the next one. Courage to be seen. Yes, please.
Okay.
I remember something. And also attempts to bring our silos together. So, you know, 60 organisations are all working on Māori outcomes as one example. Could be whatever. And that is time, money, resources, where we could be strategically trying to see where it's appropriate to bring those silos together, pull them apart, bring them together again, for what, why, when and how. Did we Oh yeah, courage to have a cup of tea. So the methodology of having a cup of tea, you know, you guys know, it's a no-brainer, but inside of those cups of tea, it's the co-design process and that process of facilitation. So being in that naive inquirer role and never coming with the answers, especially when you're working with community, is the greatest and fastest way to accelerate trust and build relationships. And yeah, I'm kind of always the toughest critic, so this process had to be incredibly robust, but also transparency is key. So that's why you'll see if you look at the website, that has been created as part of the process of keeping things transparent for our people, not only the people who we interviewed and collected stories from, but for our kahui, our group, so that nothing is hidden. All of the information is out, and then we just need to think about what we do with that. So the cups of tea has been really, sorry, didn't finish my story. We started with cups of tea, or I did, by asking the community in Waluna, you know, you used to, before, you know, phones and all that sort of stuff, how would you know that you needed to travel 2,000 kilometres away or something? How did you get those? I know it wasn't smoke signals. Watching too many movies, but what's the mechanism? What's the mechanism by which you communicate over long distances? And so that was that. So they told us, and it was through the grapevine. So you talk here, those group will talk to that group will talk to that group, and there's information shared that way. So we said, well, what could we do to bring that methodology, yarning, into the school, and would it be useful? Yes, we can have cups of tea. So we actually started to have cups of tea as a methodology. We resourced the time, because everyone's like, we don't have enough time to be sitting around having cups of tea, but actually in that time, we designed strategy. We dealt with those cultural dilemmas. Cultural dilemmas are the biggest wicked problem in schooling, for me anyway. It's quite a bold statement, but it's just me. And if we don't deal with those worlds, if we just go in that one mono world, the outcome to that for those kids was it was the poorest performing school in all of Western Australia. Highest teacher turnover, lowest attendance rate, and so on and so forth. So we brought not only the cups of tea yarning methodology in, but different Indigenous knowledge systems, just like the Maiti Aituā, the COVID mahi. And by drawing on the two knowledge systems, because one's not just a woohoo knowledge system, it's science, it's physics, it's all the things that is in the Western world. We just don't look at it and we don't use it as enough. And both those examples, using the cups of tea and using Indigenous design methodologies and Indigenous thinking, we're able to accelerate the outcomes that the people want faster, because we're using things that are familiar. We're not throwing out anything Western, we're actually merging them into mutual ways. What else? Is that it?
Oh,
think-
there's the QR codes there. We've got actually a really good observation. It's in the Slido. I'm just going to read it through. It's an invitation for you to share your wisdom. It would be beautiful to use this style of evidence gathering and storytelling for neurodivergent people who suffer from having to overcome fitting into a society that isn't designed for them. Have you come across that in your work so far?
With, well, neurodivergent, any of the areas where our people need help, I've worked with, especially in the remotes. And what was the question? Oh, how do we use this data to tell those stories? Well, that's exactly why I wanted to share this as an approach, because we, just like you, we work in government, and we can have the courage to innovate and push status quo as long as we've got the receipts to back up what it is that we're saying. And so, yeah, I think it's a useful tool for anybody to tell any story that's not really being heard as well enough as it probably should be, or in different ways, actually. We have had so much support, if you can probably imagine, on both, well, it was 2013, I'm not there anymore, but that school's gone from the lowest performing school to one of the highest. They've got won heaps of awards, CSRIO, teaching awards, principal awards, school awards, and all that we did was challenge that status quo right at the point where those teachers were clapping because those kids got off the bus. Now all of those kids go out into the community every week, and they do their learning on country and bring it back in, and they have completely designed local curriculum, which is coded into the Australian curriculum now, and the people who sign off on cultural competencies for that area is done by those elders in that community. So yeah, back to the neurodivergence. Yes, go for it, hard out.
I've got a question too. When you're talking about the transient rates with kids and transient rates with the teachers, I very transient. A lot of my bad attitude to authority comes from being moved around quite a lot. What's the single best, most important thing for us to anchor people on this transient pathway without suffocating them or controlling them?
Well, transience is, in this situation when we talked about kids accessing 60,000 years of education, transience is a strength. So it's about flipping the narratives, So how does a deficit conversation become an agentic conversation? And with me?
Yeah, I'm with you.
And just quickly lost my train of thought there. What was I saying?
You were saying how transients with the First Nations, 60,000 years of history they couldn't connect to.
Yes, so it's about opening those worlds up. We still have a problem for the education department, of course, of transients, but we were able to strategically and not by a whole blanket, one size fits all, to deal with that transience through formalised partnership agreements between the school, health organisation, the parents and the students. So we were doing that stuff many, many years ago. We had 50% of the less transient kids signed up to partnerships where we could say, well, actually, they're not wagging, they're out on country collecting emu eggs, and how could we bring that into science and all the other things? And that's how we deal with it.
Great. I was wagging. There's another question. What obligations do we have to communities whose data we are trying to collect?
Well, first of all, just stop doing it to people. Stop doing it to people. If you've got the opportunity to co-create and co-design with community, the question is, it starts with the end in mind. hey, what do you want from this? What's the goal? And then how can we handle this? It's really about asking questions, and asking for authority to commit is a key intercultural facilitation trait. And that brings me to finish my kōrero. My mahi is called Walk Together. I support anybody doing systems change or cultural change and transformation, helping them get from point A to point B through intercultural facilitation. And one thing I'll leave you with is, I think that a key thing in any of this mahi and all the other mahi I do is intercultural facilitation, where you might be a CEO, a director. I'm both of those, but I'm mainly a facilitator who gets into the intercultural space and brings people together. So I think all leaders moving forward should have that skill set, and that's me probably. Thanks.
It is. Thank you so much.